So, Craig, over to you, Prof. I've shared the topic, and it's really we're really excited to have you here. It's our first seminar series, and it was quite a challenge to get others who are not professors to come on board. We got only the two professors to come on board. I hope that Professor Irene is here. She also come on board the next time. Yeah, she will. And the Professor Probaka will also come on board. We want our top academics to lead so we can follow. So thank you very much, and over to you.
Right, so if you are able, it'll be nice if you can. This is one or two little interactive things for you to join in. So you will see there is a Menti screen. So if you can just jump into your browser and you can type in that code. There's probably a way I can actually copy the code. And I could probably put it into a chat somewhere. Let's stick it into the chat if you want to make it really easy. There is the chat's over there. So I will paste it into the chat if you just want to click that link. Otherwise, you can just go to menti.com and put in that code, and we will take it from there. So thanks everyone for who's here, and Sunny for organizing it. As you said, it's not always easy to make these things happen, but I think they're useful opportunities to talk about things. And I didn't say I've got any solutions particularly for the topic today, but I think it's an interesting topic, and I think something we have to challenge ourselves on, and hopefully do more than just challenge, do something about. So I've called it Amazing Teaching, Surviving or Thriving the EDUPOCALYPSE, which we can talk about whether it's coming. So as I said, if you can join in on Menti, because he's got a couple of little voting things so that I can get your feedback and your thinking, that will be super awesome. So there's the code up there if you haven't yet gone, or as I said, it's in the chat. You can click on that. Right, so this is the first question we're going to start with, and you can vote on that. Is an EDUPOCALYPSE coming? So in your view, do you think that we are headed for a major shake-up, break-up, mess up, whatever, of education in whatever the time period, it doesn't matter, within the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Do you think we are going to see a major potential shift, meltdown, who knows, of how education is taking place? We understand our current model. We have universities, we have schools, we have, those sort of things. Are we going to see a big shift? Right, so we got some votes in. 1 no, 1 maybe, and 2 yes, because that means we've got a whole 4 people who have managed to make their way in. But I can't show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've actually got 9 of you in there, so we should have more of you inside of Menti. So if you didn't vote on that one, please jump into the link and join in so you can. Right, so that was the first question. By the way, all the images that you're going to see in this presentation are generated by AI. So they're all AI images. So sometimes they're a little bit weird, as you'll see. But I thought this was quite a good one. I asked it to create an image of the EDUPOCALYPSE. That's all I said. I didn't even explain what that meant. It figured out what that meant and created this sort of like dystopian type world. Right. Let's just say if an EDUPOCALYPSE is coming, should we do something about it? So let's assume that it is coming. Should we do something about it, or is it something that we actually could just leave and it would be averted and we don't need to do anything about it? Or should we do something about it if we think, well, it is definitely coming? Should we do something about it? Yes, maybe, or no. Right. So we've got 2 saying yes, 1 saying, well, maybe we could just let it play out. And we had 4 voters, but now we've got 3. So 1 dropped off. And as I said, the link is here. I'm going to paste it in again for those who've just joined. If you want to just click on the link in the chat, that will also bring you into Menti. Right. Okay. So there we have it. Should we do something about it? Yeah, most thinking yes or maybe. Okay. If an EDUPOCALYPSE is coming, this is a different question. Can we do something about it? Okay, if there's this big change that's going to come to education because of all the technological things that are happening with all the other maybe pressures, can we actually do something about it? Or is it something that we literally are in the fate of, I don't know, technology and the fate of everything else that is around us? Can we actually do anything about it? Or is it something we need to resign ourselves to, just accept what comes? Right, so there we've got 3 saying yes, 1 saying maybe we could do something about it. And then no one's saying there, no, we can't do anything about it. Okay. And the final one, if an EDUPOCALYPSE is coming, will you do something about it? So let's say it's definitely coming and we can do something about it. Be honest. Would you think, well, I'm going to do something. I'm going to be part of trying to make some significant changes to either how I teach, to how institutions work, to how learning happens or whatever. Oh, we got a lot of left in now. Hey, we got a big crowd. Okay, so that's really cool. We got most people saying yes. Assuming it's coming and assuming we can do something about it, yeah, I would definitely put up my hand to say, yes, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not just going to sit here and let education go to wherever it's headed without some sort of guidance. Right. Here is a little quiz question. There's only one quiz question I've actually got, question 1 of 1, as you can see. And the faster you answer this, yeah, the more points you'll get. So the answer, well, it might not be difficult or it might be easy. It just depends. So, but maybe just read it carefully. So don't answer totally quick. Read it and then answer. And let's see who gets the right answer, but then the most marks. Now, some of you may have seen this before, but that's okay. So here we go. So it's one little multiple choice question. You should ponder it just for a moment, just before you choose the answer, and then answer. So here we go. There are 3 birds on a branch. One decides to fly away. How many birds are left? All right, 0, 1, 2, or 3 are your options. And time is running out. And there we go. Right. Most people thinking the answer is 2, which is incorrect. 2 people saying the answer is 3, which is correct. Okay, so what was it? There are 3 birds on a branch. One decides to fly away. How many are left? Well, deciding to do something and doing it are not the same thing. That didn't say the bird flew away, it decides to fly away. The bird can sit there saying, yeah, I've decided to fly away. And it turns to the fellow next to it and says, I've decided to fly away. And they all can say, I've decided to fly away, but there's still 3 birds on the branch. And it comes back to my final question. Everyone said, yep, I am going to do something about education, where it's going. Well, that still leaves us on the branch. And the point is, deciding to do something and doing something are not exactly the same thing. And as you all know in life, often people say they're going to do things and everything carries on much the same way. So the point I want to make is, if we are facing a future that is uncertain and we've got lots of people that are excited to do something, who are the people that actually get up and fly off the branch, who are actually going to do something that may be different, uncomfortable, take more work, or whatever it may be. Right, let's see who got the only 2 got it. Tiger Baby and Non-Talk, with the 2 Tiger Baby cracking it, because Tiger Baby was the fastest. Sneaky name. Who will ever know who that is? Right. Sanjay, although there are 2 birds on the left of the bird, he's trying to get philosophical. Right. It begins and also ends with the mind. And I'm going to introduce you to 3 M's that I think are important in trying to chart our course forward and trying to decide whether we're going to end up in this EDUPOCALYPSE or somewhere else. And the very first thing we need to do, and which comes back to the bird story, I decide to do something. It does start in your mind, and that becomes an action. And I don't know if you've ever seen this thing, but it's a crazy thing. It drives me insane. So for some of you who are looking at that, the lady will be spinning clockwise. And for some others, the lady will be spinning anti-clockwise. It's the same image, but you can actually use your brain and change her direction. There's various techniques. You can try and close one eye. You can try and look at her out of the side of your eye, and you might suddenly realize she starts spinning the other way. Now she's now spinning anti-clockwise for me, whereas to start with, she was spinning clockwise. It's really crazy how your brain works. Now she's going back clockwise again for me. Your brain perceives this image, and it can actually change what's happening there, which is fascinating. So this is one of these famous sort of, if you've never seen it, illusions, where it depends how we perceive something as to actually what's happening. And that's my point. The point is we have a mind, we have this brain that we can actually use to change things if we want to do something about it. So something may be going in one direction, but with the power of the mind and with resolve and with action, we can actually make it go in another direction. And so at the moment, if it's going to the EDUPOCALYPSE, is there a way that we can use our mind to make it go somewhere else so it doesn't go there? Okay, and well, if you've managed to crack this one, well, you're on the right track because you can use your brain and your mind. Obviously, this is just a visual game, but it all comes down to the same thing, the ability to use the mind. I've seen some survive one revolution, but few who survive two. And that is a quote from EDUCALYPSE. Famous Edward came up with this quote. I've seen some survive one revolution, but few who survive two. And I'm sure you've all heard of Edward. Most of you have met Edward. Very, very intelligent guy, Edward Education. And yeah, so what are the revolutions and what is Ed talking about? Well, revelation number one was the revolution that we've just come out of, was the shift wholesale across the entire planet to online. And all of a sudden, empty lecture rooms and everything was sitting in an online space. And we went through that whole thing with COVID. We've written books on it. We've written journal articles on it. We've done all sorts of things on this big online thing that was happening. And so that has happened. Now, I want to look at specifically what's happened since then, and that's Revolution 1 and a response to it, and the Revolution 2 and a response to it. And the way I want to try and unpack this is using the sort of like the M&M model. If you like M&Ms, those tasty little snacks, this is the M&M model, understanding how we are teaching and how it's shifting based on these elements, which is our mode, our medium, and our method. So let me ask you this question. It's not a true right or wrong here. You're planning a trip with friends. Would you prefer to drive with your friends on this trip or your holiday, go and travel and fly, or go together on a train? So I don't know about South Africa, but I'm obviously in Europe and places like that. You can do train trips, which are quite fun. So you can vote, pick one of those. If you were planning a trip with friends, you wanted to do something, which of those would you want to do with your friends? Drive, fly, or train? Right, we've got no one flying. Maybe that's too expensive. Obviously, it gets you far, but not necessarily time spent together. Lots saying drive, which is obviously quite fun. And train is lots of fun, especially as I said in Europe. There's we did last year for our anniversary. We did a trip in Switzerland on the train. It was absolutely beautiful. Yeah, so drive, fly, train. Yep. So those are different ways in which you could travel. Right. So why have I said that? Because that's what mode is about. Mode is about how you go places, how you get to something. And we've had a shift in modes. And now as a result, well, they've been around for a while, but now predominantly we've got three primary modes of teaching, of education that we now find ourselves in: online, blended, face-to-face. Now, just like whether you are going to drive, fly, or go on train, none of these is wrong in itself or right in of itself. All of these have different things that are associated with this. Once we have a mode, it's going to impact the other elements as well. It's going to impact the mediums we use with that mode, and it's also going to impact ultimately the methods that we use for our teaching and learning as well. And so what we've seen recently is a major shift. And we've seen a shift, obviously, from prior to COVID, mostly face-to-face, if not all, to suddenly shifting to online, to possibly maybe some blended, but maybe more face-to-face back again. So, but we've got these three modes, and the three modes bring with them different opportunities and affordances. Now, if you've never heard this, this is very interesting. So generally across the world, the shift to online was obviously during COVID was massive, and there has been a shift back by some universities, obviously, to more blended or to face-to-face. But obviously what's happened is masses of universities around the world have remained still on with the online mode. And as a result, they're obviously trying to attract. I was speaking to someone recently, now, which country were they from? I can't remember where they were. I've had so many of these conversations where they were either from, they were from the UK, that's right. And they were saying what's happening in the UK is a lot of the top universities, so we're talking about, they call them red brick universities. So these would be your Oxford and your Cambridge and all of those sort of things. They've started to offer, well, they did it during COVID. They offered obviously all their courses online. So what they've now done is they've now taken those and they've extended them and offered it to many more people, because they've realized they now have the capacity to do that, because they geared up during the COVID era. And so they're now offering all of this content online to a wider audience. So they've now all of a sudden being able to get more people that can come, and more people now can get into Oxford and Cambridge and all of these top red brick universities. Now, what this guy was saying, and the knock-on impact, is that the middle to lower universities are finding drops in student numbers. And that's becoming a real problem for them, because the students that would have gone to them now saying, well, I can go to this one for two reasons. One, it's a better university, and two, it's online. So what these middle tier universities are doing are also now shifting even more of their stuff online. But what they've had to also do is drop their entry requirements, which, as we know, that brings a whole lot of other issues now, because you're bringing students in who are not as well prepared. And that's creating major disruptions in the UK higher education market. Now, my prediction is we're going to start to experience similar things at our universities as well, because obviously we aren't bound by geographical areas anymore. Students can shift and start to do more of their stuff online. What's it going to do to us as middle tier universities? What's it going to do to our funding? What's it going to do to the level of students that we get in? So it's going to create all sorts of things. Now, what I believe is happening, in my view, at our university and at some other South African universities, talking to people, for those who joined our HEAL session, we had representatives there from Mauritius and from Australia who are still doing a lot of their work and teaching online. We've tried to shift that back, and we've tried to go back to the old style. Now, if you don't know, back in the day, there was, with the introduction of the automobile, there was a rule that was passed in the UK, and it was in 1865. And so these new fancy automobiles came into being, and they said, no, 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 no. Our streets are for horse and carriage. You can't take these things. These are not what we designed for. We are not having these. And so people are saying, we want to start buying these things. No, doesn't matter. But if you're going to have one of these fancy horseless carriages, then you can travel at a maximum of 6.4 kilometers an hour. Well, it was in miles. That's why it looks a bit weird. In the country, in the city, you can travel at 3.2 kilometers an hour. However, you must always have a man carrying a red flag walking in front of your car. So that was the rule. So if you were going to drive your car through a city, the horses and the carts, they could do their thing. You had to have a guy who carried a red flag. In fact, it even got more ridiculous than that. In the countryside, if you saw another horse and carriage coming, you had to pull off the side of the road and try and hide your car. It was just crazy. But the point was, they thought, well, if we have the red flag carrier in front of the horseless carriage, well, it'll stop people wanting to use them, and we will safe and make secure our normal horse and carriage industry. Well, as you know, if you look out your window in your parking lot, you will find very few horse and carriages there. That did not stop it at all. Obviously, the automobile took over. And that is my view of what's going to happen. If we don't shift to provide an online stream. For those of you who joined, Manoj and I ran a Cogitate colloquium a couple of days ago, and we had Professor Jonathan Jansen on that session, who most of you I'm sure will know, and he's very much obviously in touch with a lot of the vice chancellors of all the universities. And his praise was literally for one university, which is the University of Johannesburg, how forward-thinking they were with what they're doing. In fact, they're one of the few universities that actually has UJ Online. And they've seen where this is going. The bottom line is we can't ignore this. We don't think we can stand there and get people to stand with the red flag in front of where the momentum is going and saying, we're going to stop this. It's not going to happen. The car is going to overtake eventually. So I'm interested then to start to reflect on this for a moment. Has your mode changed? On the one side, we've got face-to-face, and the other side, we've got online. Now, there's three things you can slide the slider on. So what I want you to do, in pre-COVID, put the slider, how much was face-to-face? I was more probably face-to-face, or was I doing a little bit in online? COVID, well, I'm assuming we're going to see everyone sitting on the online. But now I'm particularly interested in the third slider, post-COVID. Where do you think you're sitting at the moment on how you are teaching? So you can press the little, or you should be able to drag them or something, I recall. Yeah. Okay, very interesting. So we got one in, and I'll just wait for a few more to come in, and we can get a sort of average. Right. So pre-COVID, yeah, so some people saying they were actually doing, interestingly, a fair amount, sort of over 6.3. So it's a sort of, actually towards the online, which is very encouraging, because I'm pretty sure if I did this for a non-IT group, I'm thinking we're going to find it sitting at 0 on that side. Then we had and I think, as you can see, the shift from pre-COVID to COVID, it wasn't that dramatic for us as a discipline, because a lot of us, hey, we were doing stuff online, and interestingly, yeah, a lot of the people are sort of saying we're keeping pretty similar. So that's quite an interesting line that, yeah, we've actually shifted slightly, which in my view is the right direction. I think what we're going to find out from a lot of other departments in our university is that we've got pre-COVID probably sitting at 0, COVID sitting at 10, and post-COVID, I don't know where it's sitting, either back at 0 or 2 or 3. Yeah, I mean, I'd say we cannot separate for assessment from teaching and learning. This is the major issue most traditions have with the online environment. Yeah, so obviously those are the things that we're not going to go into specifically how to deal with assessment, but we've actually, some of these have been raised in some of the sessions. We have to rethink what we mean by assessment and how it works. And hopefully you'll see some of this come up in a moment. Okay, so that was the first thing, and that was to do with our mode, and it has changed and it has to be responded to. So my second question is, you're preparing a meal for a friend. What would you prefer to use to prepare the meal if you were cooking something? Would you use a stove, an oven, or a microwave? So if you're the quick 2-minute noodle person, maybe you use the microwave. If you like to do that that roast, maybe you're going for the oven type story. You want to cook it there long and slow. Or if you, like me, good curry. Yeah, you're going to stick that on the stove and make a delicious curry. So yeah, we got the votes in, 6 people in. Yeah, so interestingly, most people, I think I'm swaying them with my mention of curry. So if people are now interested in the curry option, that's 5 saying on the stove, 3 saying in the oven, and 1 saying in the microwave. 1's like, I forget it. If the friends are coming around, I'm just going to heat them up something from leftovers. So again, it doesn't really matter which you chose, but these are different ways in which we can prepare a meal. They are different, or some of the different ways we can prepare a meal, which is basically your medium. It's the thing that you're using to do something, the stove, the oven, or the microwave. And so when it comes to our second M, our medium is, what about the air fryer thing? Yeah, that's a good one, Aaron. That's probably actually become one of my most useful things now is the air fryer. So our medium are what are the tools and resources that we are using to deliver our content. So for example, if we're in a face-to-face mode, the type of medium that we would use obviously is we would use a lecture room, which is a traditional lecture room, or we would use textbooks. It's typically in a face-to-face mode, or chalkboard, whiteboard, for those of you who remember using chalkboards. Well, we still have them at UKZN, but more digital, but it's still part of this type of face-to-face mode, is using data projectors. It's quite interesting. As I said, these images were all generated by AI. The lecture, it looks really strange. And it looks like there's even someone there and sitting in the front row with like some sort of strange thing on their head there. It looks like I said, create a sort of old style lecture room, and that's what it did. Right, so those are the sort of things we would use if we're doing face-to-face, data projectors, textbooks, lecture rooms, and if we're using the face-to-face mode, those are the different mediums we'd use. Obviously, if we're in an online mode, the mediums that we now are going to have to go with, are we going to probably use something like Moodle, LMS, we might use ebooks, we might use podcasts that we share, and we might use this, Teams, Zoom, type things. So these are the mediums that we use, which is a different set of mediums, which have a different set of options and affordances that come with them. So that's the second element of the mode, is our medium, and obviously the medium is going to be impacted by the mode, obviously. So that creates an impact. So right, let's have a look now. Again, similar question now, but this is on your medium. So let's assuming in the past you were mainly using a lecture room with a data projector, which I think is probably much the standard. And on the other side is probably using Moodle, LMS, and Zoom/Teams. Pre-COVID, if you had to pitch yourself, when I was teaching, how much of your teaching was like lecture room data projector, how much was now I was using the LMS and Zoom or Teams, and then during COVID and then post-COVID. So again, same sort of options. Let's see how the medium has potentially changed. Right, we've got a couple have come in. Let's just wait for more. At the moment, we're sitting obviously with pre-COVID, sitting more down on the lecture data projector side. Obviously, COVID, we had no option, so I'm assuming that would be 10, unless you were sneaking in somehow. Somehow I've got their COVID, not quite using the LMS and Zoom. So maybe they were doing something else during there. And then post-COVID, lecture room data projector. Right. So here we're seeing, and it's possibly because of the shift in the mode and the shift in the mode from being online to more a blended approach. We're seeing we're going from a pre-COVID, where again, I think that was quite the fact that we even at 4.6 is quite high, probably because we're an IST department, that we were actually almost in a blended type method over there using technologies from both sides. COVID, obviously, we switched largely to 100% online. And now post-COVID, we've dropped back again to started to go more lecture room, data project, etc. And so that would tie in similar to with the different switches and modes from face-to-face to online to now trying to take a blended approach. Right. So my first part there that I wanted to just point out is that we have had a shift, and the shift has happened worldwide. And I believe that while UKZN, we did really well with adopting new technologies, I just, at the moment, and I may be wrong and maybe I've missed something, but I haven't seen us pushing a very positive and innovative strategy going forward, like universities like UJ and others are doing. We have the ability to take our courses, which we could offer face-to-face and offer a complete online stream and be opening ourselves up to all sorts of other income opportunities and students from around the country. We have great lectures, we have great content. You know, if we're going to limit ourselves, we could be having a whole new business model going. But I believe if we don't do that, well, others already are. As I said, when the overseas universities are already starting to see the impact of that on them. So that aside, that's the first thing. We've had the shift. How are we going to respond? Are we going to respond? Yeah, people say they're going to respond, but are we actually seeing any? Is the bird actually leaving the branch? But if it was just that, we might say, well, maybe we'll survive. Although I don't think we would survive that shift, because I think that shift of 2 years of recoding how people learn is no reversing it. But now there has been another. I've seen some survive one revolution, but as Edward said, few who survived two. And revolution two happened end of last year, was the rise of the AI. And this has been another one on top of the first one. So we were coming back, we thought, oh, it'll be life as usual now. We can forget all that online stuff and what was happening, and that'll just, you know, chalk it down to bad experience and bad years. Let's go back. And well, that in itself, I don't believe is possible. But on top of that, now all of a sudden we think, what is this thing that's come here? It is an AI that appears to be able to do basically my job, and allow students to do all sorts of things. So we come now to the third aspect, which is the method. And this is the method of how you teach. And obviously your method is dependent on your medium. So if I am using data projectors, if I am using lectures because I'm in face-to-face, I have a method of teaching. So typically, when you sit in a classroom, when you're face-to-face, when you're working in a lecture room with data projectors, your medium is going to be lecturing, or it might be doing a demo up front to your class. But it typically is captured as it's passive, because that's how it works, because you have a big class, everyone sits there, they sit in the right venue, and you deliver and they listen. So that is typically the method in which we lecture. I know you've all tried it. You try and get some engagement from your students, but typically they're really not interested, and it's hard to get them to ask a question, let alone answer a question. Right, if we have been using our mediums, in which we have over the last year or so, where they've been LMS and video conferencing, typically the methods that work there can be lecturing. Obviously, you can record content and stick it on there, but typically they open themselves up to other things like online discussion, which you can't really do when you're sitting using a lecture venue with data projectors. It opens you up more to group learning. You can have forums, you can do all sorts of things there. Typically, it enables you to have much more active learning, because you shift a lot of the learning requirements from the lecturer giving the content to the student actually engaging in the content. And so the methods start to change. So the methods are different now, and more discussion, more group-based, and they are more active. So here's my final little slider question on all this. How's your method changed? So if the two sides, and I'm trying to sort of summarize, if the one side is more based on lectures, which are relatively passive, I stand and I speak in a class and people listen, and the other side is, no, I'm using lots of discussions and active learning, which is typically associated with online. How would you think you've changed in your methods of delivery from pre-COVID, COVID to post-COVID? So obviously a lot of us were typically in the first, and you might have not been totally there, but it's quite difficult in a fixed venue, in a face-to-face venue, to do the discussion and the active learning. We can try it. There are ways in which we can do it, but let's see how things have shifted over the period. Right, so we've got 2 in, we'll wait for some more. So how have you shifted from being just sort of lecture-based to from more passive on the one side to active? Has that changed from pre-COVID to COVID? Right, so at the moment, pre-COVID, interestingly, most people are saying, yeah, we were sitting actually a bit more on the active learning. It's interesting, it's changed and it's gone up a little bit higher, but now in COVID, people are saying, oh, we actually got a little bit more